Have you ever felt like your Arabic sentences are just stuck in the present tense? Well, today we're going to unlock all of that. We're diving into a special class of words called defective verbs that give you the power to talk about the past, the present, and the future. Okay, so let's get right into it with a challenge that trips up a lot of people. In English, it's easy, right? We have is, was, will be. But a basic Arabic sentence, what we call a nominal sentence, doesn't really have a tense. By default, it just is. So how do we get it out of this timeless state? While in English, you just pop in the word was. Simple enough. But in Arabic, when we add the verb kana, something really fascinating happens. Take a close look at the second word. See how mujtahidun becomes mujtahidan? That one tiny change to the ending is the whole secret. It's the key to unlocking time in Arabic, and that's exactly what we're going to break down today. So, here's our game plan. We're going to start with this whole timeless sentence problem. Then, I'll introduce you to the solution, these special verbs. We'll see it all in action with the master verb kana. Then, add another tool for negation. And finally, we'll cover a really key detail that'll make you sound way more fluent. Okay, first things first. We have to really get a handle on the problem we're trying to solve. You see, an Arabic nominal sentence, which is just any sentence that kicks off with a noun, is super powerful. But like I said, by default, it's timeless. It's stuck in the present moment. Let's take this sentence. The students are diligent. In Arabic, both pieces, the subject or mubtada, and the predicate, the khabar, are in what we call the nominative case. Just think of that as the default, the neutral state. Both sides of the sentence are grammatically equal, a level playing field. So how do we give this sentence a past or a future? The solution is this really cool class of verbs called Afaal-e-Naqisah, which literally translates to incomplete verbs. Now, the name itself gives us a huge clue. They're called incomplete, not because they're faulty or broken. It's because unlike a normal verb like kataba, he wrote, which is a complete thought, a verb like kana, he was, just doesn't make sense on its own. He was what? It's hanging there. Incomplete. It needs a predicate to finish the idea. All right, let's see how the most common of these verbs, kana, completely transforms a sentence. This is where the magic really happens. Okay, here's our original sentence one more time. I want you to really zero in on that predicate, mujtahiduna. That ending tells you it's in that default nominative case we talked about. Now watch this. Kana enters the sentence, and this is the most important part. It acts like a grammatical catalyst. It doesn't just add its meaning, it actually forces a change in the sentence's structure. And boom, there it is, the transformation. The predicate shifts from that default nominative case, or rafa, to what's called the accusative case, or nasab. You can see the ending changes from una to ina. That accusative case is a signal that the predicate is now being affected by the verb kana. The subject is left alone, but the predicate is now linked directly to kana, and just like that, the meaning becomes the students were diligent. You know, once kana shows up, the parts of the sentence even get new names to reflect their new jobs. The subject is now called the noun of kana, and the predicate becomes the predicate of kana. Makes sense, right? Awesome. So now that we've got that main rule down, let's add another incredibly useful verb to our toolkit. Laisa. And here's the beautiful thing about this system. It's consistent. Once you understand how kana works, you already understand laisa. Laisa means is not, and it does the exact same thing grammatically. It comes into the sentence, finds the predicate, and flips it into the accusative case. See? It's the exact same pattern. Al-kitabu kabiran becomes laysa al-kitabu kabiran. The predicate kabiran shifts to the accusative form kabiran, and the sentence is instantly negated. It's just that simple and elegant. All right, let's keep building on this. This next detail is absolutely crucial for sounding natural in Arabic. It's all about how the verb behaves depending on whether the subject is right there in the sentence or if it's just implied. So check this out. When the subject is apparent, meaning it's spelled out for you, like al-babu, the door, the verb kana just comes before it in its default singular form. But when the subject is hidden or implied, the verb itself has to do all the heavy lifting. The subject is baked right into the verb. In this case, just saying kana by itself implies it was or he was. And here's an even better example of that. On the left, we've clearly stated our subject, the girls, so we use the singular feminine form, kanat. But look to the right. When we take out the girls, the verb itself has to change. It has to carry that information, so it morphs into kunna, the plural feminine form, to tell us they, them, were. So, let's put it all together. The big takeaway here is that you now have a powerful new toolkit. With verbs like Kana and Laisa, you can give any simple sentence these new dimensions of time and negation. And what's the golden rule? It's always the same. They march into the sentence and flip the predicate into the accusative case. If you can master this one concept, you've mastered a huge piece of Arabic grammar. So, as we've seen, these incomplete verbs aren't just about actions. They're more like powerful grammatical tools that can reshape an entire sentence, adding these incredible layers of time and reality. And that kind of makes you wonder, what other secrets are hiding in Arabic grammar, just waiting to change the way you see a sentence?